recreations, gaming, and entertainment. For a nature-inspired getaway, Lake Durant and Lake Texoma offer visitors and residents alike tranquil waters for fishing and boating, as
Okay, I have 4 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. The May 3rd, 2022 Durant Industrial Authority monthly meeting. And Tammy, if you'll call the roll, please.
Trustee Edwin Booth.
Here.
Trustee Steve Brinningham.
Here.
Trustee Mike Davis.
Here.
Trustee Grace Rudolph is absent. Trustee Jeff Shattuck.
Here.
Vice Chairman Brett Rogers is absent. Chairman Jeff Hammock.
Here.
Advisory Member Tammy Gwynn is absent. Advisory Member Thomas Newsom.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum, but I'm a little bit out of order. We should have done invocation first and then roll call. If you'll bow with me, I'll present the invocation. Father, thank you for this time you give us to serve in the capacity as the DIA for this community. Pray that all decisions that we make will be for the benefit of all those involved. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, next order of business is consent items. The first one is 1A, and it's to consider approval of the meeting minutes of April 5th, 2022.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. And now we'll vote. Item 1A passes. The next item is 1B, is consider approval of the financial report. Okay. Does anybody have any discussion or anything regarding the approval of the financial report for 1B that was emailed to you in your packet? If there is none, we'll let the record stand that the motion that was presented would be for 1A and 1B. Next item is number 2, consider items removed for consent. There were none. Next item is item number 3, information items, Executive Director Report. Lisa.
Okay, so you have your printed report that I included in your packet. I'm not going to bore you with going over that, but I did want to point out a couple of things. Project Bison, we've been talking about this one for a few months, and I'm happy and very pleased to say that Durant is one of only 2 communities in the running right now. It's the Red River Battle. So there's a community in Texas. We will have a site visit later in the month of May for this project, so I'm pretty excited about that. Also, you have in your your handouts that I left for you up there. I've been approached by a local company that has a site here and one in Sherman, and they have they've been asked to vacate their leased property here because a new development is going in. And so they've approached me about the property on Arkansas Street. You remember we acquired that last year. Websteront has gone through some changes. There's been no movement as far as leasing or selling that property to that company. This other company would like to lease this property from us. Their offer or their proposal to us is in front of you. Basically what they're asking is it'll take some work to get the property up to par with what they need for their use. What they're proposing is a 5-year lease at $1,500 a month paid to the DIA, which it's my understanding the lease payment would go into sales tax. Tom, correct me if I'm wrong there. But he is proposing that the first 3 months of that 5-year lease, he would pay no payment because he would be putting money into our property that we own. So that is before you. It's not on the agenda today. I did receive this just a couple of hours ago, but I did want to make you aware and see if it's something you are okay with me going down this road and looking at a lease agreement and putting on the next agenda.
Anybody have any comments or questions about this? The one thing that, after looking at it, are we comfortable with the 5-year lease?
Chairman, if I may, I feel
Yes.
like if we discuss it and talk about it, then it's on the
Right.
agenda.
Right.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda, we can't.
That's true.
I just want to
That's
know if
true.
I'm okay to go down this road, work with Tom on the legalities and all of that. But if we're not interested in even listening to that, then it's not worth me spending my time, so. It's the only reason I mentioned it.
I'm just saying, for the
Sorry.
sake of the agenda is the only reason
Okay.
I bring
You're
that
Yeah.
up.
correct. I was just giving
Tom and
my
I had
input
this
to it.
discussion, Tom and I had this discussion this morning, so that's why I brought it up under this, so.
Well,
Just know that I'm working
is
on
it
that.
okay to discuss it?
It's probably okay as an informational
Okay.
item. It's not okay to make a decision or probably even give a head nod to proceed.
Okay.
But the director
Okay.
can say, I'm going to bring this back on a future agenda.
Okay.
And you could even enter into some sort of contract or lease agreement subject to the approval of the authority.
Okay.
And
Okay,
the authority could take it up at that time.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So are there any questions on any of the things I've reported on? Nope,
It appears none.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Item number 4 is administration. Lisa, I think you'll have the floor on this. 4A is discussion, consider, and possible action on implementing a technology grant program for small business.
So these are the lengthier documents in your packet. This is something we talked about a few times over the last month or so. The first one is a technology grant for small businesses. You'll see on your agenda that we're going to talk about the Rural Business Development Grant later on down the line. Part of that grant application was that, it's for the Small Business Boot Camp. We are developing a small business resource guide as part of that to, sell sponsorships, raise funding for the match part of the grant. Part of that grant application states that participants of the Small Business Boot Camp will be provided a laptop, or point of sale, or a technology-related equipment or software. And so we are working to raise money for the boot camp, but I got an opinion from Tom that states that we can use the economic development sales tax for our small businesses. So what we'd like to do is look at this, 2 separate grant programs. The one I'm talking about now would be for the technology portion of that. So what I'm proposing is that we implement a grant program and budget for it each year, this first year being a pilot. And participants, or to be eligible to apply for the grant, obviously you would have to be in that LMI census tract or the new markets tax credit, which would be the low to moderate income portion of town. So we're looking at the downtown area, up First Street, down 9th Street, all over in that section of town. Applicants would be required to be enrolled in the boot camp, which would be 12 weeks of comprehensive small business training for the business, as well as technical assistance. That would be provided by the Oklahoma Small Business Development Center, REI's Rural Women's Business Center, and Choctaw Nation's Business Center. They would be providing all of the training, all of the counseling and technical assistance. So the requirement would be that they be enrolled in this boot camp, which is no cost to them other than a time commitment. What I'm proposing is $2,000 each for that. When we were discussing the type of computer system and the requirements, if you wanted something that would last 4 or 5 years, it's going to cost around $2,000 for that. The purpose for the laptop portion of this, in the initial discussions for the boot camp, we were talking about cybersecurity issues. We have a lot of small businesses that are using their handheld cell phone and they're doing their financial bookkeeping on that. They're running our debit cards to run transactions for the store. They're keeping their social media for their store on there, so on and so forth. And there have been a few instances that I know of where we've had some cyber attacks, probably because of those things going on. That's where the discussion about the separate laptops for the boot camp came along. So I am proposing a grant program for small businesses, participants of the boot camp, for a $2,000 grant. There would be, I've put my proposed application in the packet for you to review. There would be some type of promissory note or something I would work with Tom to develop where they're signing, saying that they would complete the boot camp and use it not for personal use, but using it for their business purposes. And then we would want some type of follow-up by the end of the first year, because I'm big on evaluation. I want to make sure that they're, getting the use out of it. And then once that year's up and we've got a little bit of data, we can see if this, if we need to move forward and do this again or continue to do it, or if it just was a flop. So, and our proposal is that for the boot camp itself, we want to run this 3 times in the year. We're looking at potentially 10 businesses each time. It's easy to manage that number for a 12-week boot camp, number of businesses. So we're proposing 30 businesses in a year at a cost of $60,000. The budget part will come later on the agenda, but I just wanted you to be aware of that, kind of where I was going.
Do you have any questions or comments for Lisa?
How are the applicants screened? Who's the screening committee for who gets chosen?
So that has yet to be determined. It's my understanding, because it's sales tax, the applicants would have to be approved by the Durant Industrial Authority members and also the city council members. And Tom, did you get a chance to look at, does council approve at the next meeting if we approve, and then it's just up to DIA? You were going to look at that, or do they have to see individual applicants as well?
I don't think the council would have to approve each individual expenditure, but if there's a budget item that sets aside a lump of money or a block of money for a particular purpose, then the council would have to approve that. But the DIA could set the criteria for approval of those grants and approve the individual grants.
So you all would be the committee.
And then just a follow-up question. In terms of that screening process, is the criteria simply that if they're eligible, we approve, or are we going to possibly screen out people who meet all 5 bullet points and then nonetheless don't get to participate?
It is. So you have to be a participant of the boot camp, so you have to sign up. It's a first come, first serve. We are accepting applications for the boot camp right now for our first boot camp, which starts June 5th. Deadline to apply is on Friday. We are time stamping them when they come in. And so if they don't make this boot camp, then we tell them we're going to host the next one. Once we have enough people for the second cohort, as soon as the first is over, we can start that second cohort. We don't want to intentionally leave anybody out of this, so.
Any other questions, comments?
And this is a proposal. If there's something in it that needs to be changed, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, the discussion, now this was just for 4A, correct? This is where we're talking about just 4A on the agenda.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
All right, so what's proposed in front of you is the discussion, consider, and possible action on implementing a technology grant program for small businesses, according to what Lisa shared with us.
I move to approve 4A, implementing a technology grant program for small businesses in the amount of $2,000
Each.
each.
Thank you.
For a total of 60.
Okay, we have a motion before the authority. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, motion 4A is approved. 4B is discussion, consideration, and possible action on implementing a grant program for small businesses. Lisa.
So this would be the original program that I had discussed with y'all. This would be the $5,000 grants to small businesses. This would be targeted to the same LMI, the census tract in town. Eligibility would include that they complete one of two things. They either complete 30 hours of comprehensive technical assistance and small business training from one of our 3 partners, or they graduate from one of the boot camps. So we're looking at 30 businesses plus, I'd like to at least, we'll talk about this in a bit, but I'd like to budget for at least 40 businesses to do this pilot year, just so that we can open it up for those businesses who may not have the time to commit to the full boot camp, because those will be held on specific days and times, so on. I'm proposing that we also handle this in the same way, that it's first come, first serve. Once the money's gone for the year, I'm sorry, but you're welcome to come back and apply next year, or at that time, maybe the program's a success, maybe I'll looking at the budget and amending and adding more at that time. We can cross that bridge, when we get there. They would also be required to submit their full business plan, which includes marketing and their finances and all of that, which they will be required to develop that during the small business boot camp, but they can just go to their local, small business development center or Choctaw's business development center and get assistance to develop that plan there as well. We will be, during the boot camp, in collaboration with their technical assistance advisor, they will be developing a project plan, which will be required to complete the boot camp program. So they'll identify, what their project is, what would really help their business be more successful, or maybe expand, add a new line of something. And when they develop that project plan, they'll work with their technical advisor to identify are there financing options out there for those things. And so where the $5,000 grant comes in is maybe that's one of their options to help finance their project. The criteria that I have put in the proposal is that this money could not be used for inventory acquisition. So you could maybe buy a piece of equipment or something like that, but you can't buy food to sell out of your restaurant, or you can't purchase hair color if you're a salon or stuff like that. So nothing that's inventory. It would have to be equipment, or maybe their front windows busted out or they need a facade renovation, or whatever that project is that helps them along.
Okay. Comments, questions about 4B as presented by Lisa? Main thing, you don't want them to pay their receivables or buy inventory. Really, it needs to go towards the infrastructure of their business.
Correct. Or the equipment, yes.
Or equipment, yes.
You said 5,000 per grant?
5,000 per business, lifetime maximum.
Up to 40
on that.
businesses?
Up to 40 businesses is what I'm proposing for the first year. That way it would cover the 30 businesses that would potentially go through the boot camp in 1 year, plus 10 additional that might apply if they go through it, if they just go through one of the centers and get that 30 hours comprehensive.
Another thought that came to mind is it's 5,000, but if they come in and say, hey, I really need 4, are they going to be eligible for another 1,000, or they just get to apply one time? Or is
that would be up to you all when you approve it. But I would hope that we would just keep it at 5,000 lifetime maximum, as it is in my proposal. If they come in and they only get 4,000 and come back a year later and need something, that's up to you all at that time, because they've not reached the 5,000 maximum. So I would accept the application, bring it to the trustees for your decision.
Comments, questions?
Can I add one more thing to that?
Yes.
My thinking on that is I would much rather a business honestly come and tell me, hey, I only need $4,200 for this project, but I can't think of anything else to get to 5,000. I would rather them honestly come tell us, hey, I only need $4,200 now. Can I come ask for the $800 later? Rather than to pad it up to the 5,000 and maybe add something they don't really need right now. Because something may come up down the line that they really do. They could use that money for. So, just my opinion, though. And something else, and I'm just going to say it because nobody's brought it to my attention, but it's something that's kind of weighing on my mind, is we need to make a decision about how we handle like any dispensaries, bars, They do pay sales tax, dispensaries, you know, to my knowledge, marijuana is not legal federally yet, so I don't know how we feel about supporting that. So that is something that we're going to have to decide. I don't know if that has to be decided at this moment or when the application comes in, and I'm waiting for Tom to jump up and say something, because it's not something we've even discussed yet, but it's something that has come to my mind, and we are going to have to handle that, so.
It sort of goes back to the question earlier of criteria that Mike asked about. You know, is it going to be an ad hoc approval, or is everybody that meets the criteria? Dispensaries are legal businesses like car lots, liquor stores, fast food restaurants, or boutiques that sell clothing and gifts.
Right.
So I think you sort of operate on a slippery slope if you start excluding categories of businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I think if they meet the criteria that's set forth, as long as the business is legal
Okay.
and recognized by the state and in the city.
First come, first serve.
First come, first serve. And I will, you may have read this, but just in case you didn't read through the whole lengthy application packet that I put in front of you, I did put that criteria in there that you do have to be in good standing with Secretary of State. You do have to have all your local permits and inspections. Everything has to be, and we will check those things, make sure that it's all in good standing before we bring it to the DIA to look at. So.
Anything else for Lisa for item 4B?
One more thing I just want to say. I'm sorry. So we're looking at potentially a business could get $7,000. But what I want us to be mindful of is the fact that when we bring a large company in or we do forgivable loans for industry, we typically do, you know, up to, depending on the situation, we do up to $10,000 per job created or retained. So I just want to, you know, bring that fact forward that we're just asking for $7,000 for small businesses, noting that they are smaller businesses. They're not bringing in the 200 or 300 people, 200 or 300 jobs or whatever, but they are a very important part of our community. So that's it.
Thank you. Anything else from the members of the authority? Any comments or questions on 4B? The item before us is discussion, consideration, possible action on implementing a grant program for small businesses.
I make a motion that we approve the implementing the grant program at up to $5,000 per business for the estimated 40 for the year.
We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. Okay. Item 4B passes. Next on the agenda is item 4C, discussion, consideration, possible action of budget to fund small business grant programs. Lisa.
So I am asking for us to budget for the next fiscal year, so starting July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023, an amount of $60,000 for the Small Business Technology Grant Program. That would serve 30 businesses. And $200,000 for the Small Business Grant Program, which would serve up to 40 businesses. That's a proposal. You can offer more.
I'm sorry.
That's a proposal. You can offer more.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, comments, need additional information on item 4C as proposed and presented by Lisa at this time? we need more time to think about 4C? Do we want to table it, or do we need to?
We already voted on the other to do them, so we might as well, yeah.
But this would be actually budgeting
Yeah,
for
this is
that
just a
money,
budget
because we've
item.
already approved a budget for next year, so,
To amend the budget.
Would you like a motion?
basically, yeah.
Make a motion to budget to fund the small business grant programs detailed out in items 4A and B.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Item 4C passes. The next item on the agenda is 4D, is discussion, consideration, possible action on entering a contract for services with Amy Meadows of Windows Matter in the amount of $5,000. Lisa, you have the floor again.
Lengthy meeting, but if you leave here with nothing else today, leave here with the fact that we're having a small business boot camp. Amy Meadows is one of the speakers, one of the contractors that we proposed in our grant to bring to Durant to work with our boot camp participants, but also to host an event that's open to all local businesses outside of the boot camp. Her fee is $5,000. I personally have brought her to a community before. She does a really amazing job. She teaches the businesses about, the flow of their store and cleanliness of their storefront and their store, window design, just all of the above. But she hands-on works with the business owners in their businesses, and she does a really great job. The Oklahoma Main Street Center actually referred her. They have brought her to Oklahoma in the past. She's actually been to Durant before several years ago for a program manager's training, and she comes highly recommended. She lives in Chicago. She's nationally known and has worked all over, and she's phenomenal when she comes to town. I've experienced it. But her fee is $5,000. That's all inclusive for her travel. I believe she'll be here 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. So that's all of her prep time ahead of time. She would do a webinar ahead of time for the participants to prepare them for her to come to town. So it's all inclusive. And this original price that she gave me, so we started talking to her back in November or December in preparation to submit the grant application to USDA. And she gave us the quote of $5,000 then. Well, I talked to her the other day and said, well, travel has significantly increased in cost since our original discussion, and she left it at the $5,000 for her fee, all inclusive of the travel. So,
Comments or questions for Lisa?
and you should have her information in your packet there.
Would this be something appropriate to discuss with Main Street or with the chamber, that they would maybe possibly partner?
This actually, okay, so we're developing a small business resource guide as part of this boot camp, and we've been selling sponsorships for the boot camp. So far, we've taken in $6,000 in sponsorships for the boot camp and for development of that guide. I've been in conversation with I'm trying to be careful how I say this, but I've been in conversations with the grant officer with USDA, and it's looking very favorable for us right now for that. This would be something that would be reimbursed or paid for by the grant, should we be funded. However, we have already collected in our account now $6,000 toward the boot camp from sponsorships, and we expect a few more to trickle in. So either we use sponsorship money to pay for it, or hopefully we'll be funded and use grant money. Because the consultants were part of the grant that we wrote. And that's, I left a stapled packet up there that shows the grant budget that we'll be discussing here shortly. But you'll see in there that under RBDG funding, you'll see consultant training sessions. All of those have been budgeted for under there. But again, we have already collected $6,000 in sponsorships
Which that could be used for payment of her services.
Correct, correct.
Comments, questions for Lisa on item 4D? Okay, what's before you then is item 4D states discussion, consideration, possible action on entering a contract for services with Amy Meadows of Windows Matter in the amount of $5,000.
I make a motion to contract for services with Amy Metters, Windows Matter, in the amount of $5,000.
We have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. Okay, item 4D passes. The next agenda item is item 4E, is discussion, consideration, possible action on entering a contract for services with Heather Lyle
Yes.
in the amount of $2,500. Lisa.
So Heather Lyle is a subcontractor for the same purposes, different. She's marketing, e-commerce with our businesses, teaches them how to do their online newsletters and things like that. It would be part of the boot camp again. Her fee is $2,500. She would drive up here and, drive back and forth, leave the same day. So she doesn't have the travel involved with her services like Amy Meadows would have. So it's only half as much. Of course, she won't be here as long either. Again, we've collected $6,000. I have verbal commitments for more than that, but I don't have anything in writing on the sponsorships beyond what we've already received, the $6,000. So I expect enough money to come in to pay for Heather as well. But we right now only have $1,000 toward hers committed, so.
Comments or questions?
Have you heard her before?
She comes highly recommended from the state director of the Oklahoma Small Business Development Center and her team members. And I've talked to her on the phone several times, and she does have quite a presence, so.
I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Thank you. The next one's.
Okay, item 4E passes. Next item on the agenda is item 4F, is discussion, consideration, and possible action on requesting a forensic audit by the Oklahoma State Auditor and Inspector. John, you'll be presenting that motion or that information to discuss.
Sure.
All right.
The city council approved, I guess, 2 weeks ago, pretty much to request a forensic audit. And for the authorities to be part of that, they have to approve to be part of it. So they only look at 2 years. You select a 2-year period, so whatever 2-year period selected would be the same for all parties being looked at. The cost is estimated to be $30,000 to $60,000. The city bears that cost. I don't know. If they find something in the 2-year period, then they go outside of that period if it takes them out. But other than that, they just look at a specific 2-year period. And they only start going back 5 years. So that would be the farthest back that they could go. And that's because financial records are only maintained by law for 7 years. So they couldn't look at anything, beyond 7 years. So unless the financial records were still present. So I don't know that to be the case for DIA, but anyway, questions?
Any questions for the city manager?
What is the rationale for the audit?
That's a good question. The mayor requested it. It was brought up at a ward meeting, I guess, in March, April. And so she requested that it be put on the audit, put on the agenda to be considered. Councilman Miller was at that ward meeting, and he concurred with her. So other than that rationale behind it, I don't know, so I don't know what the precursor is to actually have it. So I know Councilman Miller's here. Maybe he could answer that question for you from a council member perspective. So,
And just to be clear, that there is no instances of mismanagement?
no, sir, that is correct. We do have a financial audit every year. They don't look at 100% of our transactions. They pull a percentage and they look at those. So they don't look at every transaction, but statistically, if your transactions percentages are, meet the requirements, then there's no reason to look at anything else 100%. So.
What is the substantial difference between a regular audit and a forensic audit?
I've never been involved in a forensic audit, but my understanding is they'll look at this, just the regular audit, they look at to make sure you're following policy, procedures, law, and all of your purchases follow those guidelines. There are single audits that are conducted when you spend in excess of $750,000 of federal money in a year. So those are looked at separately. We have that occur quite often because of the grants that we receive. And a forensic audit, they look at specific things, my understanding, right? You could tell them you want them to look for, X. And if they find that, then that's what they do. You can tell them you only want certain departments audited, right? Certain types of transactions audited, but that's not what happens in the regular audit. So, if that helps.
Most forensic audits, if they do find something, they'll keep digging and drilling down deeper. It's a more comprehensive audit, and I think it needs to be done every so often. What time frame, I couldn't answer that, but your annual audits are more of a surface audit, if that's a good way to put it, and your forensic is a deep overview of everything.
When's the last time we had a forensic audit for the DIA in particular?
I don't believe we've ever had a forensic audit in Durant at all. So I know the state auditor came down, I believe it was in 2016, and looked at some things, but it was not a forensic audit. So I don't believe there's actually been one conducted in Durant at all. So,
you said the fee would be included in the city's payment?
the city gets billed 100% for that fee, and the estimate's $30,000 to $60,000. So
if it is a targeted audit, who's going to give them direction to what to look at for DIA books?
I believe that's where you're going to get into a lot of technical amongst the council and amongst the authorities, because if all the authorities are involved, you'll have to figure out exactly what needs to be looked at. And the audit is, the state auditor's office told me, 12 to 18 months out, once they receive the request, before they actually even get here. So, but yeah, that's why, what gets looked at, that's up to you guys, and it'll have to be hashed out once we get closer to that period, if you request it. So,
Just for clarification, it was not a unanimous decision by the council to move forward?
that is correct.
quickly?
It was 4 members present, and the vote was 3-4, 1 against. Yes, sir.
Any additional comments or questions for Mr. Dean?
Are we in a position to hear from members of the council that are present in the room, or is that out of order?
Tom, that's not out of order. It's just informational from any city council member that's present, or can they share?
I believe that would be up to the chair. If the chair wishes to hear information from either trustee Brittingham or council members present, I believe they can.
I would say so.
I think it'd be good for the authority to hear what their thoughts are on the forensic audit. You all agree?
I agree.
Okay. Steve, do you want to be the first one up, or you want another council member?
I'll reiterate what I said the other day at the meeting. I think that it's a waste of money on the citizens' behalf. There is no indications or any other reasoning why to do it. There has been no mismanagement that anyone's aware of. It was brought up at a board meeting, and a decision was made to move forward and put it on an agenda item. And personally, if you're going to go back now, I guess it's up to 5 years, but it's only a 2-year period. And so we're at 18 months possibly, so we're, maybe. I just don't think it's a good use of taxpayers' money if there's not something out there that someone is specifically aware of that needs to be addressed. And that's my opinion.
I think we have a couple other council members in attendance today. Would either one of you care to address the issue? Councilman Morris?
Sir.
You have the floor, sir.
I'm Mike Morris. I've been on the council for 3 years. Just to make it clear, long before I got on the council, I was hearing talk about people wanting forensic audits, specifically citizens. I had quite a few people tell me they are very much in favor of a forensic audit. Some knew what it was, some didn't. But this is not something that started 2 months ago or 2 years ago. It's been discussed for a long time. No way is the DIE being pointed out or selected or anything like that. In my opinion, I would like to have a nice, transparent, very thorough, deep down audit, and once and for all, if it comes out good, which I think it will, we'll have ammunition to tell the people that do have suspicions there's nothing wrong. If we find something wrong, we'll go after it. It's that simple. But I see it more as a transparency and the tool for us to say, look here, we're okay. So.
Anybody have any questions for Councilman Miller? I mean, my apologies.
Morris. You know, and personally, I would like to see it go back 20 years. I've lived here all my life for 50 years. Obviously, we can't, and it's going to be a year or more before it happens. And I believe things are going very smoothly in the last year or two, and I cannot imagine anything bad coming out of it, starting from 6 months ago to whenever it happens, and I just think it's a nice thing to do.
So which 2 years, at some point, the state auditor is going to come back to you and say, okay, tell us which 2 years. Which ones are the council going to say?
You'd probably get 5 different answers. You know, that's just a guess. I don't know. I don't even know which 2 I would want.
I would have a follow-up statement. It's not against Mr. Morris or anything, or Councilman Morris. Transparency has been brought up before and again, and I brought it up the other day at the meeting. The problem with transparency is we're in the driver's seat. We get to pick and choose what 2-year period, then we get to pick and choose what they look at. So I don't know that you're ever going to satisfy someone who has an issue.
You guys in the banking business obviously are more familiar with this than we are, the different audits and things you have to go through, and I think you understand. It's not really a picking on anybody. It's just a good thing you do to make sure you're on the up and up, and you can present that to the public and other people that have doubts and go down the road. So that's my motivation. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Councilman Morris? And thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilman Miller, would you like to address it, or you don't have to if you choose not to? You're here, you might as well.
Short and sweet. I've just been approached by numerous citizens about this forensic audit talk. Several of them wanted one. I'm here for them. That's why I'm in where I'm at. So they want it done. I'll say go for it. So that's all I gotta say. Any questions?
Do you have any, same question about the 2 years, do you have in your mind right now?
No, I think it's something the council will have to get together and maybe discuss and figure out like a certain time frame, something like that. I mean, I don't have nothing like off the top of my head that I'd like to, kind of like Mike, I'd like to go back 20 years, but we can't, so it's one of those things. Anything else?
Thank you.
So, just so I understand, council's already approved for the city. Our decision is we want DIA included.
That's correct. It's
That is correct.
DIA,
That's the way I understand
DCFA,
it.
any of the authorities that the council does not control.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, the agenda item before us is 4F. It's discussion, consideration, possible action on requesting a forensic audit by the Oklahoma State Auditor and Inspector. We've had some good discussion on this. We've had varying opinions. Do y'all have any other further questions or comments on this item?
At some point, we will probably be challenged as the DIA to target our own 2 years regardless of what the city council does, or will we have to match exactly which 2-year window the city council chooses?
My understanding is they have to be the same years.
Okay?
And correct me, city manager, if the DIA wanted to do their separate audit, then it would be at our expense if we choose to do different years.
If you choose to do your own, it would be separate, yes, sir, and you would bear that cost.
But right now, the city's going to bear the cost for any
Yes, sir.
forensic audit. Okay, thank you.
And if the city were to specify what particular types of focus they wanted the audit to have, would we have to match that focus?
My understanding is that once we get to the point where they've selected the date that they're going to be here, that's when what gets inspected gets identified, right? And I believe that you would have input in what gets looked at from the DIA's perspective or any other authority's perspective, is my understanding from talking to the auditor. But the 2-year period would be the same. But when you request the audit, that's when you get close to the time is when you determine what really gets looked at. Because like he told me, is that, you know, things could change. So what you want looked at today may not be what you want looked at, you know, a year and a half from now. So
I just have one last question, I'm sorry. How typical would this be for a municipality in the state of Oklahoma to request its own forensic audit, or would that be unheard of? I don't know.
I don't think it's unheard of, or they wouldn't be backed up 18 months.
Okay.
So
My understanding is I'm aware of other forensic audits of other companies and or municipalities. I don't have those available to share with you, but I know that's done in the business world also, where they do deep dive forensic audits. Just because there is a cost to it, and I understand there is an expense to it, but at the same time, it just shows how you do your annual audit is one thing, but a forensic audit is a lot deeper, and it covers a lot more items.
But to Councilman Brenningham's point, you're picking the window that I told you to look at in every transaction instead of 10%, so.
Good comments, good questions. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to item 4F? And again, the item before us is discussion, consideration, possible action on requesting a forensic audit by the Oklahoma State Auditor and Inspector.
I move the motion requesting a forensic audit by the Oklahoma State Auditor and Inspector, item 4F.
We have a motion. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Without a second, the motion will die for lack of a second. Okay, hearing no second on item 4F, that motion is not acted upon. I'd like to bring up the fact that it's not tabled, it's just not acted on, correct, for lack of a second? Is that the protocol, Tom?
Fails for lack of a second.
Fails for lack of second, correct. Okay. All right, so item 4F Fails for lack of second. We'll move on to item 4G, is discussion, consideration, and possible action on a resolution in support of an application to the USDA for a rural business development grant. Lisa, you have the floor.
So a couple months ago, you all approved a motion to give me approval to apply for the grant from USDA for the boot camp. And they are looking through our application, and they need an actual resolution adopted by you all. You have a copy of that resolution in front of you. Tom has looked at that, and other than formatting, there was nothing wrong with it. So, and that's all I need. That's all we lack in submitting the remainder of the documents for their review.
Any questions for Lisa on item 4G?
I move.
We have a motion and a second. Let me just restate that. The item 4G is discussion, consideration, possible action on a resolution in support of the application to the USDA for a rural business development grant. We have a motion and a second. We will now vote. Item 4G passes.
Thank you on behalf of all of our small businesses. Thank you.
Okay. Item 5 is executive session. We have nothing, so there will be no action on item 5A or item 5B. Item 6 is new business. Is there any new business to present to the authority today? Lisa has none. Does members have any? Okay. We're at the point of adjournment. I need a motion and a second if you want to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We'll vote. I didn't think it was going to pop up, but we are adjourned. Thank y'all.